Very warm welcome today to this series of sessions we're having on AI beyond the hype. The goal of which is to demystify the application of Gen AI by discussing with companies who are delivering now measurable benefits, what they've learned along the way. We'll also have the opportunity in what should be no more than 30 minutes to get their views on the AI platforms vying for market dominance, which is taking up the vast majority of the media's attention, of course. But before all that, an introduction to who we are, Scale Up Group, where I'm the executive chairman and founder. We obtain funding for high growth tech businesses, upwards of £3 million. And also we continue on the journey by providing advice and guidance through CEO Forum and so on. And David Williams, who is my guest today, is one of our clients in that context. So far, we've raised around £60 million, and our goal always is to get the best possible deal for the entrepreneur. Welcome and thank you, David, for coming along to sharing your experiences from the front line, so to speak. If you can sort of introduce yourself, your background, and also what your business does for starters. Thank you.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me. Just about myself, I'm deeply passionate about how technology can drive meaningful change, particularly in the customer interface that businesses have, and also in the complex world of pharma and healthcare. My background, I had 9 years at BP in a big multinational, doing all sorts of change. The constant was change, but I ended up in the BP Mobile joint venture on the customer side, integrating customer services across Europe. My wife told me she was pregnant. I said I was resigning. We came back to the UK from Brussels for me to start my first business, which is something I always wanted to do. My first business, we built the world's largest, with a couple of great co-founders. We built the world's largest customer management benchmarking database and sold that 3 years later to the WPP group and took it around the world for the next 5. Since then, I've been involved in customer experience consulting, BPO and technology businesses. And in 2018 and 19, I got rid of all my investments and thought, what next? What's the future? And of course, the future is AI. I'm a customer guy. So I ended up starting a business with a couple of other great guys. So my role, I'm the founder and CEO of Conversations. It's an AI-based conversation intelligence platform that helps global pharma and healthcare companies accelerate growth. We work with 10 of the top 20 global pharma companies, delivering measurable improvements in field force effectiveness, coaching, and patient engagement. The goal for us is simple: use AI not just for the sake of it, but to create real scalable impact.
Very impressive, David. So a second time around entrepreneur. Let's hope your wife doesn't get pregnant again, because you may go off and do something else. But you've covered a lot in your introduction there. And I know that you're working with enormous enterprises, which itself is a challenge. So maybe you could just touch upon that. But at one stage, one had the impression that AI was a solution looking for a problem. I think nowadays, more and more we're seeing, as you say, measurable business benefits. Can you quantify any of those and how long it took you to achieve them with your client?
Yeah. So yeah, we've been applying AI in pharma and healthcare for over 5 years now. Probably long before the AI hype cycle, which is probably a curse, John, you'll tell me, when you're trying to make a market and get people to adopt new technology. Back then, I think companies were curious and but a little hesitant, and pharma's quite conservative. Yeah, I mean, very innovative at the front end R&D stuff, but quite conservative in terms of go to market. And actually, our breakthrough probably came as we started to really drive tangible, quantifiable outcomes. And I'll give you a couple of examples, because I think that was the question. So we generally see 20 to 30% increase in kind of what they would call good outcomes or improvements in commercial effectiveness in their conversations when they use our platform. What we're really trying to do for pharma is move from an old world where a human would review, sit alongside you in a field visit meeting, or they'd do an annual field audit where someone would got a checklist and would look at that. And we're trying to get into
David, sorry to interrupt, but for those who may not be familiar with the pharmaceutical industry, we're talking here about thousands and thousands of sales reps, aren't we, in the field?
Yeah, we are. Sorry. Thanks, John. Yeah, sorry. I forget that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's about 450,000 pharma reps, branded pharma reps worldwide. So, it's pharma's primary weapon in their go-to-market, and I can call it that, in gaining drug adoption across the world. So, it's their key commercial lever. And so, sorry, you're quite right. So coming back to the point I was making is when you're in an analog world and you're kind of reviewing, individuals' performance, you're doing that in quite a slow, incremental way because it's human, and therefore it needs both judgment, but also it's expensive because you need to be in the room at the same time. So what we've done is we listen to conversations digitally in the field. And in doing that, we can listen to many more of them. And by providing detailed feedback and recommendations and suggestions in every conversation, we're effectively the sat nav for conversations in the field. You then are able to improve much faster. The byproduct of that is a whole bunch of customer insight that the head office chaps can use to drive kind of the overall top-down effectiveness, while you're helping and enabling and empowering individual users to see where their strengths and weaknesses are and improve. So the benefits are really quite significant. So probably in our best case study, we've had triple-digit growth, John, having been flat for 4 years. So in terms of, can make a massive impact to commercials. In the NHS, we work with doctors with their patient interactions, and we've improved patient experience by 50%. So really quite significant. McKinsey would say just from conversation intelligence platforms, which is what ours is, you can get 5 to 15% improvement in market performance. So if you take the average top 50 drug, John, that's an incremental $350 million to $1 billion in value for that one drug. So that's it.
Okay.
You start to see why it matters.
Annum.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
So it's really very significant.
I'm intrigued to, well, I know, but I'm sure some of our audience won't know. I get how your technology could work in a kind of remote conversation, such as the one we're having now. But when it's a face-to-face one, post-COVID, how does that work?
So we've got an app on an iPhone or an iPad or an Android device where we listen to the conversations and feed those obviously securely up to our cloud platform for analysis, and then feed results back down onto that device. So within 20 minutes, after an interaction, the rep can receive detailed feedback about their conversation, what they did well, what they could potentially do better. And then they can start to ask questions of their conversation, John. So kind of this new agentic AI, I'm sure we'll come on to talk about, is what we have embedded in our platform. So we reference the analysis that we do, a best practice library of communication skills, and also the individual clients' materials, the sales aids, the objection handlers, the training that they do, to be able to answer precisely what they could do better in a very obviously in a very compliant world. That needs to be very precise. So that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Is that a one-time exercise or is it a continuous one?
Yeah, so we believe in continuous improvement and accelerating that improvement cycle. Right. And so, they'll do that a number of times during the course of a month, obviously with the consent and permission of a physician. And it's, the classic, we're monitoring conversations for training and monitoring purposes to improve the customer experience. So when we do that, you effectively get some really interesting insights. So you hear from the horse's mouth, effectively, from the real conversations in the real world, what people really think, and that's golden in terms of corporately, the customer insight.
Awesome. How many users do you think you have in these organizations?
Yeah, it's thousands. I won't say precisely, John. That's commercially
No.
sensitive, but I
Yeah.
I can give you a sense of it. You know, we're I guess we're leading the market. We've analysed over 40,000 conversations. We work with 10 of the top 20 global pharma businesses. So that gives you a sense of the scale. And we're a multilingual platform. So last year we worked in every continent in the world, and we worked across 15 different therapy areas. You know, everything from diabetes to oncology to rare diseases, vaccines, immunology, all those sorts of all the big therapy areas, basically. So it's a very broad
Mm.
platform that's finely tuned for pharma.
Now, given how large these organizations are and inherently possibly skeptical about technology companies coming along and promising the earth and delivering less than that, you must have had some significant issues along the way. I think the audience would be interested to know what they are.
Yeah, many vary, John. Of course, you know what it's
Yeah.
like trying to build a tech business. Not for the faint-hearted, especially not dealing with enterprises. Yeah, I think that the biggest ones were kind of, you know, I think in the beginning everyone was kind of curious. The challenges, you know, trust and compliance, I think, were the biggest ones. You know, AI in pharma and actually generally must be explainable. It can't be a black box. So we had to build Kai to provide auditable, you know, insights, ensuring confidence in those insights so that people can reference exactly where they came from. Um, you know, we know technology, you know, it's only useful if people adopt it and use it and get utility from it. So we've really had to focus on the intuitive interfaces, and the direct value for teams. So we've been on quite a journey there where you kind of look at how people really use your system and what they find useful. And of course, what you think is useful isn't that useful in the end. And then they tell you what you want. And that really led us to pioneering on the agent kind of interface, because by asking precisely what you want and giving you very precise answers, then you get exactly what you need, rather than a complex interface where you're trying to cater for 59,000 scenarios of what I might want to know about my conversation. So adoption is really, really important. And integration, you know, AI works best when you integrate it with existing workflows. So you want this to happen in the flow of work. And so you need to be integrated directly with the CRM, the coaching platforms, and the sales processes, so that it actually not only is a learning and development platform, but actually it takes some of the admin away. So you can automatically create the field reports that need to go into the CRM and all those sorts of things too. So three things: trusted compliance, adoption, and integration, probably the biggest challenges that we've had, John.
I mean, your sales cycles must be painful sometimes.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Thanks for that. Yes, they are. Although they are reducing. So I think, you know, so pharma, the context of pharma is they're highly compliant, regulated organizations, and we are probably, because we're making the market, we're at the front end of pushing them for the first time to use AI in a customer facing solution.
Right.
And so the challenge with the big global guys has been privacy, security, and AI bias. And so we've really go through the ringer in the global to get global sign off. So it's not easy, and it probably took us probably a year to onboard an enterprise client to get through all of those hoops in the first instance. That's now come down rapidly, as we obviously have all the answers for those things, and we're starting to compress that. But the first time any organization goes through proper AI adoption, I think people are working out for themselves, and everyone seems to want to have a view on it, John, as well, which is probably
Yep.
good. But yeah, because everyone's got a view, almost everyone feels like they can say no, or oh, I'm not sure, and I'm not quite. You know, it's a new thing, isn't it? And so it's that new technology adoption, but with a lot of regulation around it. So anyway, that's a journey that's becoming much faster. I think ChatGPT did us a massive favor in terms of a couple of years ago raising the profile of what was possible, you know, and what could be possible. And I think that's really helped in terms of people getting their head around what AI could be. And therefore, you know, that's why I think, you know, we're in an adoption phase now, rather than simply dealing with the early adopters. You know, we're starting to get into the mass adoption phase.
So you're going beyond the hype phase. I'm going to come back and ask you about, do you have any opinions about the various Gen AI platforms out there. But before then, Financial Times, I thought, wrote a very interesting, thought-provoking article, which described what they thought were the four major considerations when contemplating what may or may not be suitable for AI apps and agents. Namely, number one was complexity. Secondly was frequency. The third was interconnectability, which you touched upon as well. And the fourth one, I think is a really interesting human one as well, is the cost of getting it wrong. And you've seen the article now, I know. Any reflections on that?
Yeah, I think they're largely right. Probably some nuance around that, but I'd add. I think it's about matching the right AI to the right problem, because I think everyone thinks Gen AI is the only AI in town, whereas obviously we still use machine learning models. We have neural nets. So I think you've got to understand that it's not just about Gen AI in the world of AI. Of course, that's the latest bus that's come along that everyone's focusing on. So I think generative AI is great for summarization, content creation, coaching feedback. Its strength is its natural language understanding. We're certainly leveraging some of that, and so sort of starting to categorize. Intent is a real sort of near human accuracy, and probably actually better than human accuracy. Is a really important part of it, I think. And that point about the cost of error is really interesting. What we've found over the years is almost people want to hold AI to a higher standard than human. And people often realize, actually, we all have our inherent biases, not necessarily about race or religion, but actually about the way we see the world. And, what you think is a great sales conversation, John, is probably very different to my view about what one is. And so depending on our perspective, we'd focus on those areas that we thought were important. Well, that's bias in its own sense. So trying to get that objectivity into the analysis is what AI does. It gives you, if you program it in the right way, it gives you reliable, repeatable results around quite complex constructs. So it actually does a much better job than humans. But to come to your point about cost of error, it's really about the application, I think. So, if you're in the medical field and you've got, a radiology scan for potential cancer, you can't afford to get it wrong. Now, you can program AI to make sure you never get it wrong, but to do that, you also get a whole bunch of stuff which is wrong. So I'll never miss a diagnosis, but I've got to give you a whole bunch of false positives. So obviously then you've got the pain of going through all the false positives, and potentially, if you did just call everyone and go, I think you've got cancer, then you're causing a massive problem that may or may not be the truth. So it really is in the subtlety of the accuracy. So I definitely think this cost of error is important. And I think almost more important than that, and it's kind of embedded in some of the regulatory frameworks, is about the human in the loop. It's about, what AI am I really using to automate decision making, which is obviously what you'd like to do, because it would be the most efficient use of the technology. Whereas there are definitely some applications where you need to put the human in the loop to make the judgment, to go, yes, it is, or no, it's not. And so in our AI approach, we do give recommendations and suggestions to the user, but we let them be the judge of whether they want to do something about it. So we're really clear, although we accelerate performance, we're not a performance management tool. I think it's the intent involved in the AI, and you've got to be really clear about the use case of what you're doing, and therefore where the decision making is happening. And we took the view we should leave that to the human being, albeit we're making suggestions to them about what they do and don't want to do. So I think it was a very good framework. The complexity piece, I think, is actually almost a misnomer, because I think the Gen AI stuff can deal with so many complex problems. We'll get on to talking about the platforms in a moment in terms of some of the research breakthroughs and in the news yesterday, obviously, ChatGPT's $20,000 per month PhD student is now available to you if you want to pay that fee. So I think the complexity argument is definitely receding because AI really can, especially the use of agentic technologies, which we leverage as well, can deal with some very complex problems now better than humans actually.
Very insightful, David. And I hadn't really thought about this before. How we are reasonably tolerant about human error, especially in the most challenging circumstances. Medical can be one of those where the judgment of a medical person may or may not be correct, and we by and large accept that as a risk. So, and therefore, I think what you're saying is we must accept that there may be risks associated with AI as well, but so long as those risks are less than the human ones, then there's a net gain. But then I think that your key point was a human plus AI ought to eliminate as much as one can. No, life is not like that. Risk. So I think that's very kind of thought provoking, and also hopefully it emboldens users to embrace AI more quickly than trying to wait for the perfect solution, which I guess will never come along.
Yeah, and I think that augmented intelligence point, which is what I call it, John,
Right,
is really
right.
important. And there's a couple of quotes that aren't mine. It's not it's the people that are using AI are the ones that are going to get ahead and get an advantage. So it's not about AI replacing humans, but augmenting us and making us superpowered by AI is really the future of the world, I think. So it's embracing it and having it as a co-pilot alongside you to help you is the most powerful application of the technology. So
yeah. So do you see any threats from AI? There have been some scary numbers talked about in terms of jobs lost, etc., etc.
no, it's a really interesting balance, John. There's a story around industrialization. So when the car came along, people's reactions, it was on the Times newspaper headline, was kind of, what are those poor 7-year-olds who follow the current horse and cart around and scoop up the poop off the streets? What are they going to do in this age of an automobile? And we reflect back on that now. We go, well, that's not a particularly good job for a 7-year-old to do. But at the time, of course, it was their livelihood and it's how they contributed to society. And so I think we're going through the same thing here, which is, why do we really think that these jobs are going to be lost? They will be lost because machines can do them more effectively. There is a whole shift. I think it's happening much faster than most people realize, that AI can do things much better. What's going to probably temper that is the AI adoption curve. We touched on it, which is it can only go at the speed that humans are capable of absorbing it. But I think that's what we're seeing with AI being embedded in devices now. Apple Intelligence, one of the latest examples of that. Not nearly quite as good as they'd hoped, but definitely going to be much better in the future. But gave me a lovely summary of the most important email on the top of my email box rather than me having to search down it this morning, as an example. Small little help. So that those sorts of things that help people are going to gain and drive adoption. But I think it's the human nature of us being able to absorb it is going to slow us down a bit. But the change, I think, is seismic, John. It's absolutely seismic. And if people don't think that this is going to be a massive societal challenge, then I think they're misguided. It's so I think we have to do an awful lot about that and a lot of thinking about it for reskilling, for thinking about what productive work looks like. People have long talked about, the sort of the minimum universal income that everyone should get, and what are they going to do with their time when they're anyway. Those are a few years off, but they're really important considerations, I think, for us all in this world to be thinking about.
Thinking about that and your own particular situation and those sales agents of reps for the pharmaceutical companies, I suspect there must have been some resistance by them in the fields? I mean, sort of the big brother men fear. How did you overcome that?
Yeah, we took, there's two sides of it. So there's a kind of, I think there's a triangle of trust that's really important. So you've got the customer or the healthcare professional, the doctor, you've got the rep, and you've got the organization. And if the clinician doesn't trust the organization, they're not going to want them to record the conversation and analyze it. They just, because I don't
And the
trust you.
clinician being the customer, in
Yeah,
effect.
exactly.
Yeah.
And if the rep doesn't trust the organization that they're going to use all this information responsibly, i.e., you're going to fire me if I don't say X or Y, then I'm not going to want to do it. And therefore, I'm going to find everything in my power. As many CRM implementations of sales-based technology implementations have found that the rep has a lot of power in whether they actually get adopted or how fast. And then obviously,
Yes.
if the clinician doesn't trust the individual that they're seeing, then they also won't agree to it. So there's this triangle of trust, and any one of those things break down, you can break the model. What we try and do is show it as positive change. It's actually an investment in the individual, and it's helping them to get better. And it absolutely isn't available to the rest of the organisation, the data about that individual. So the personal information is kept personal. Obviously, head office get an aggregated view, and so they're getting that balance right of it's not about John or David when we look at the overall view, but we seem to have an issue with the capability in this area, therefore we should do something about it. Is really the sort of the key driver. But yeah, the rep is key to adoption, and that's why we've really focused on utility for the individual rep to really help them out.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, that human side of it will make adoption happen or not happen. Yeah. So no, you're clearly in the vanguard, David. Your company pioneering this application. So the future must be looking bright for your business. So what are your thoughts about how the company's going to progress?
Yeah, we're scaling rapidly, John. And our enterprise clients are rolling out globally now. So there are you've got to work very hard to keep up with the tech. There's a lot of new stuff comes out every single week that you've got to take either advantage of or be cognizant of. I think probably our biggest advantage is our vertical focus.
Right.
Being useful rather than a generic in a specific vertical means we're highly tailored. So I think that's really important for us in terms of giving us a sort of a defensible position that's has utility beyond a generic tool. And then we're focusing on we're launching in the US. I mean, we already work there, but we're kind of trying to penetrate the largest pharma market in the world. It's about 44% in the US, and Japan later this year, early next year. And again, we already work there, but it's more about trying to increase our distribution in those countries. So the AI-driven insight, the demand for it's massive, and I think we're quite well positioned to continue to lead in this space. So, next exciting times, John.
Yeah. I declare an interest as a shareholder in your company, and we look forward to giving you the horsepower, i.e., the cash in this case, to let you resource those wonderful opportunities you and your colleagues have created for yourselves. And top marks too, David. I think we pretty much bang on our decided 30 minutes. So unless you've got any final thoughts, David, I think we're going to thank our audience for listening, and hopefully they found it useful and informative for them in their businesses.
Yeah, thanks, John, and we really enjoyed the conversation. I do have perhaps just a couple of closing thoughts.
Yeah.
I think just generally this is an exciting time for AI. The hype is real to the point of the podcast, but what matters really is measurable impact. AI isn't magic; it's a tool to be used. So when used correctly, it can accelerate growth. It does improve decision making, and it scales expertise across an organization. And that's exactly what we're delivering at Kai Conversations.
Fantastic. Thank you, David, once again, and the very best of luck with your future plans, which I'm very confident you'll achieve. Thanks once again.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
John. Really appreciate your time. Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.